Have you ever seen a lawyer who was so good you were lost for words? I had been the victim of a road rage incident when I was in my 20s. Long story short, I was in a left turn only lane, the perp was in the right turn only lane, and he wanted to go left. I made my turn, without ever noticing him, as there weren't very many cars on the road, and went into a restaurant to pick up my dad's dinner. He followed me in, kicked the chair out from under me, and kicked the crap out of me while screaming, "Do you know who I am?" Luckily, one of the waiters got his license plate number. I had 8 broken ribs, a fractured cheekbone, and he had ruptured all of my stitches from my gallbladder surgery that I'd had 2 weeks prior. He tried to have me arrested for assault, saying that I threw him against his car. I'll come back to that. At my first court appearance, the prosecutor took me into a room and wanted me to drop the charges against this guy. I obviously refused. The prosecutor said, "You are 22, you work as a barber, and you live with your parents. You are nothing. Jamie, the perp, is a pillar of the community, and is the child psychologist for the county, so I'd think real hard over this." I couldn't believe it. He was talking to me as if I wasn't the victim here. I did point out that I had brought a witness, the waiter, as well as notarized affidavits from several people who were in the restaurant at the time, and CCTV footage from the restaurant, too. She refused to allow them to be admitted. Wasn't she supposed to help me? The judge wanted me to let the perp have my car fixed by some unlicensed guy, whom he had treated when he was in school. He broke a window and keyed the door. I agreed to an estimate, but I was going to get my own estimate as well. My sister used to work as a legal secretary, and she took me to one of her old bosses. We went over all of the evidence, and he agreed to come with me for the second court date. So, at the next date, the prosecutor called me back to a private room, before going into the courtroom, again trying to force me to drop the charges, but still wanted me for assault. My lawyer, Mark, said, "So you say that my client threw Jamie over the hood of his own car and held him against a wall with his right arm, correct?" The prosecutor said, "That's what Jamie told me." Mark, Jamie, how tall are you? Jamie, 6'3". Mark, Cole, how tall are you? Me, 5'8". Mark, Jamie, you are a big guy, easily close to 230 pounds, while Cole weighs 150 pounds, so how could he throw you? Prosecutor, that's not important. Mark, I disagree. Jamie, you said in your sworn statement that Cole held you up against the wall with his right arm. Are you certain that you want to say that? Jamie, that guy is a wild animal. Who knows what those people are capable of? Mark, well, Cole had emergency surgery 2 weeks prior to the incident, on his right side, and still cannot lift that arm past shoulder level, no, thanks to you. Also, he's left-handed. Checkmate. Jamie, at this point, jumped up and started screaming about how important he was and I was just white trash, when Mark stood up, looked down at him, he's 6 feet 7 inches, and said, "Sir, you might have convinced this prosecutor that you're somebody special, but I have, in my briefcase, a filing, ready to go to the state board, along with all the evidence from this case, as well as sworn observations about your general behavior from your fellow psychologists and some of your neighbors. You will never be able to work again once I'm through with you, so I suggest that you sit the F down and admit that you lied and that you beat this white trash guy for no reason." Then, he turned to the prosecutor and said, "How dare you assume that someone is guilty because they're not from this crappy town? What does that prove, or are you just bored and lazy?" Jamie had to pay for all of the damage done to my car, as well as the ambulance service, medical costs relating to everything that he did to me, and the damage he did to the chair in the restaurant. All of my charges were dropped and expunged. Mark usually handled divorce cases, but he had way too much fun that night. Flash forward a few years, when I was at a luncheon with my mom. We ran into a friend of hers, who is also a child psychologist for another district. My mom mentioned my case, and the woman said, "We've all been waiting for that idiot to get knocked down a few pegs for years. He's a nightmare to deal with, but he did lose his job shortly after your case was resolved. The district didn't want to have to pay out a small fortune if and when this guy blew his top again, so they forced him into early retirement.